your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News Weekend Edition with Jeanette Roche.
Hello, thanks for joining us for a look back at Alberta this week. The man who caused the 2018 Humboldt Broncos bus crash may have to be deported back to India. On Thursday, a judge dismissed the application from Jaskirat Singh Sidhu, who was fighting to stay in Canada. His lawyer says Sidhu plans to apply to have his permanent resident status reinstated on humanitarian grounds. Meanwhile, the father of a 21-year-old who died in the crash says he and his family want to move forward with their lives. Lethbridge's Toby Boulay, father of Logan Boulay, says that means having the man who caused the crash deported. Well, 2 people have been arrested following an investigation of sex offenses committed against a southern Alberta child. Police say they arrested the child's mother at a home in Lethbridge on November 2nd after obtaining a search warrant. Officials with Alert's Internet Child Exploitation Unit say the alleged abuse actually began a year earlier in Barnwell, Alberta, which resulted in the arrest of a 41-year-old man. He is being charged with sexual assault, making, accessing, and possessing child pornography. The child's mother, a 34-year-old Lethbridge woman, faces similar charges, including sexual interference. The mother will appear in court on December 19th, and the Barnwell man will go to before the judge on January the 16th. Police will not reveal the identities of the suspects as to protect the identity of the young victim. The brand new agri-food hub and trade center in Lethbridge that just opened its $7.6 million doors is in big trouble. The Alberta government has declined the city's request to provide $1.4 million in capital funding to support the trade center. The city's financial support for this funding request was conditional on receiving financial help from the province. A statement from Lethbridge Mayor Blaine Higgins' office says, quote, "Without the commitment to provide emergency funding, the original resolution Council approved on November 28th has died, and Council will be reviewing next steps. It is important that we protect the significant financial investment the city has made in this project and look for ways to move forward in a positive way." Well, the news that the province said no to the emergency funding hit Lethbridge and District Exhibition hard. CEO Mike Workington released a statement which reads, "I wish we had more certainty for our organization, in particular our staff, board members, and those who have events booked with us. They are the groups most affected by the lack of a solution. We will meet with our board of directors to discuss our limited options and work to understand the future and viability of our organization." Bridge City News also reached out to the office of the Alberta Agriculture Minister, R.J. Sigurdsson, but he was unavailable for comment. A petition to remove Medicine Hat Mayor Lindsay Clark came up short this week, so it looks like Mayor Clark will keep her mayoral hat on after all. The petition required 25,000 signatures or 40% of eligible voters, but reached only 1/3 of its goal, or 7,843 signatures. It was started by Nicole Frey, who is part of the Advocating for a Better Medicine Hat Facebook group. On a webpage on change.org, Frey says Medicine Hat is in trouble and has an ill-equipped and inexperienced mayor and city council. She cites soaring energy prices, increasing drug use, and homelessness, and says, quote, "Council is continually and consistently unprepared at meetings, complacent, and full of excuses." And they show their, quote, "inability to research and understand the issues put before them, and more concerning, they then vote on them anyway," end quote. Frey, who is also starting a petition to remove certain council members, says the majority of council, along with the mayor, are in their first term and have a lack of experience to run the city properly.
I have not experienced anyone who came forward and said they're doing a great job. The people who did come forward were mostly saying they're new. We knew that they had no experience, and so they're just getting their feet wet, and so kind of giving it that grace there. And I'm okay to give grace when it's new, but again, as soon as you start impacting families' abilities to feed their dogs, pets, or kids, that's where I was like, grace is over.
BCN reached out to the Medicine Hat mayor's office and received a written response, which reads in part, quote, "Our community is clearly signaling their desire to be engaged, and that is a good thing. Public input is a vital part of the democratic process. It is important for the city to listen to residents, be open to new ideas and solutions to problems, and continually improve in all areas, including how we communicate and engage with our residents." Up next, we hear from some nurses who are unhappy with the province. Registered nurses in the province are not happy that the Alberta government is planning on utilizing more licensed practical nurses while allegedly decreasing RNs positions. Meanwhile, there's a group called LPNs for Change who say they too are upset for not being recognized for the current work that they're doing and want to be reclassified under direct nursing. They say on one hand, the government has decided that they're not really nurses, but then on the other hand, want to replace RNs with LPNs. An appeal has been filed with Alberta Labor Relations.
LPNs have been practicing direct nursing care for well over a decade. I myself have been nursing for about 11 and a half years, and I have been practicing direct nursing care that entire time. Right now, as it stands, LPNs are currently classified under the bargaining unit for auxiliary nursing care, which also includes unregulated healthcare workers, such as healthcare aides. And we've been there historically for quite some time for reasons that do make sense in the past, but our scope of practice and our educational requirements have changed vastly over the years, and so now we are no longer providing direct nurse or auxiliary nursing care, and that placement within that bargaining unit is no longer appropriate for LPNs.
Our concern is that the government is supposed to look at what we do. It's based on job functions and deal with these bargaining units. And right now, our job functions are obviously 99% overlapping. And now they're saying, well, it doesn't matter. Job functions doesn't matter, even though we stated that it matters.
This week, Premier Danielle Smith concluded meetings with government and business officials from Qatar and at COP28 about potential investment opportunities. Smith says the United Arab Emirates and Qatar want to partner with Alberta in various industries, including health technology and creating direct flights, expanding mutual trade and investment. During the climate conference in Dubai, Premier Smith also pushed back on what she called the voices of those obsessed with accelerating the phase out of sustainable and affordable energy. In a statement on Wednesday, Smith said, quote, "We were gravely disappointed to see Environment and Climate Change Minister Stephen Guilbeault and other radical activists continue to push an approach that would consign the world to energy poverty and economic stagnation by focusing only on ending all fossil fuel use." That extreme position was defeated at COP28 by a growing alliance of thoughtful world leaders that well understand we can indeed grow our economies, develop our natural resources, and ensure energy and food security for the world while reducing emissions through technology and multilateral cooperation. As many Albertans continue to struggle with the rising cost of living, the opposition NDP is demanding that the Alberta government continue with its provincial fuel tax pause. The province has been saving Albertans 13 cents per litre at the pumps, but that is scheduled to come to an end next month.
In a province grappling with escalating rents, a housing affordability crisis, high grocery bills, and rising power prices, the UCP are focused not on how to help Alberta families, but on how to help themselves. A recent survey showed that nearly half of Albertans are planning to cut their holiday spending so that they can stretch their limited funds to cover the essentials. The survey suggests that 49% of those residents are using the money for groceries instead, while nearly half say they don't have any additional money to spend. Less than a month ago, Premier Danielle Smith said the economic challenges facing Albertans was a reason to extend the fuel tax exemption. But the financial pressures for many Albertans remain the same today, with many struggling to meet their basic needs, and yet the UCP have decided to reinstate this tax.
Well, the province announced it's investing just over $4.1 million to fight rising crime in Calgary. Officials say the funds will be used to hire 50 new police officers. Many of the new hires will be set up in high crime locations, including transit centers and the downtown core. Additionally, the province is putting $8.3 million to help Edmonton hire 50 new police officers to battle crime in the provincial capital. Public Safety Minister Mike Ellis says the extra funding should help improve public safety and fight criminals who continue to prey on vulnerable residents.
At a turbulent time as social disorder continues to occur, putting Edmontonians at risk. And as we all know, violent crime continues to be a significant challenge in all of our urban centers, particularly in Edmonton and Calgary. In Edmonton, all statistics indicate that violent crime continues to grow. This alarming trend is deeply concerning for Edmontonians. We must act now to make our city streets safe again.
Coming up, we hear from a former Alberta chief who supported the Northern Gateway Pipeline project. But first, a short break. Welcome back. Several years ago, you may remember the disagreements over the Northern Gateway Pipeline. Well, one Alberta former chief who wanted that project to go through was Dale Swampy. Mr. Swampy is the president of the National Coalition of Chiefs. He and David Lease of the Frontier Centre for Public Policy chatted about the pipeline company, and the Coalition of Chiefs were eager to work together to see this project come together for the various bands. Have a look.
Here in 2016, you founded the National Coalition of Chiefs, and you're the president. Why did you found that organization?
We started the National Coalition of Chiefs as partly because of the cancellation of Northern Gateway. We kind of fell backwards into the coalition model. In 2006, when I left my band to start working on my own, you know, if you told me that coalition of chiefs working together, you know, is a good model to utilize, I wouldn't have believed you, because first of all, our four nations within our own community can't work together. It's difficult for chiefs to get together because they don't often have the same viewpoints or same ideologies and so forth. So it's difficult for them to join. But when we had Northern Gateway, there was a common benefit that brought them all together. And I think that was something that was key to it. And something more impactful was the fact that each First Nation got an equal share of the equity that was being offered by Northern Gateway. And this allowed chiefs who represented smaller communities with less capacity, less influence, and so forth, you know, to come to the table because they knew they had an equal voice. And I think that was you know, the real impetus for the kind of success that they had. They started working together. They had more influence. They were able to get more benefits than just the 10% equity.
So Dale, can you explain what the Northern Gateway project really was for people that are not familiar with it?
Well, it was a large pipeline that was going to go from Bruderheim, Alberta to Kitimat, BC. It was going to build a terminal in Kitimat, one of the widest and deepest channels, the Douglas Channel, safest channel today. It's where right now LNG Canada has their terminal for the LNG terminal that they have, that they're building now. So we started to work for them in 2010. They were working already for about 6 years, trying to get First Nations to come on side with them and sign agreements and so forth. When we started there in 2010, one of the first questions was, you know, what do First Nations really want? And we saw from our previous experience in Alberta Clipper and Southern Lights that what they really wanted was long-term agreements rather than one agreement, sign off with a check and then walk away. And it's difficult for the pipeliner too, because most of the activities in construction, once it's built, there's it's kind of out of sight, out of mind. There's hardly any work being done for operations and integrity work and so forth. But I think Northern Gateway was different because it wasn't just owned by the pipeliner, which was Enbridge. It was owned by 9 of the producers in the oil sands, 5 of the biggest producers, almost all the producers from the oil sands except CNRL. And when they went into the project, instead of creating a one-off signing agreement with one check, they agreed to sign an agreement for 30 years. And on top of that agreement, they were willing to give free and gifted equity to the First Nations. So they didn't have to finance, they didn't have to, they weren't deducted in any way for, any cost of borrowing and so forth. So this gift was given to them, and to offset the shareholders' loss of income from their revenues that they be given to the First Nations, the producers agreed to top up the toll rate in order to handle it, because they knew that the oil wasn't going to the United States; it was going all to Asia, 100%. Something you don't see in TMX.
Right.
TMX, you're just going to see a small portion of that going to Asia with the Brent prices, increased price opportunities, and so forth.
Up next, ever since the Sound of Freedom movie came out, more and more people are becoming aware of the horrible reality of human trafficking. After the break, we introduce you to someone who's trying to do their part to put a stop to it. We'll be right back. Welcome back. The movie Sound of Freedom has shone the light on the disturbing reality of human trafficking. My next guest is part of a group that has not only their boots on the ground, but their tires as well, doing all they can to eradicate the exploitation of young children and women. Paul LaBelle is the acting president for the Alberta chapter of Bikers Against Trafficking. He explains how Southern Alberta is shockingly a hot spot for this type of crime, and that sometimes it's even young women doing the recruiting.
Well, we're not an MC, a motorcycle club, or an RC, riding club. We're an organization. We're simply everyday people who share their love of riding motorcycles and have answered the call for a higher purpose. So we are the Canadian division of an organization that is headquartered in Lake Mary, Florida. We're a small group of approximately 30 members based in Southern Alberta and Southern BC. A team of dedicated men and women who volunteer their time and finances to help break the chains of human trafficking. We do this through education and bringing awareness to everyday people, spreading the word that sexual exploitation and modern-day slavery is not acceptable in our communities, our province, and of course our nation.
Now, I know there's a lot of motorcycle organizations that are kind of doing good for the community and whatnot. It might be to do away with that stigma of the big bad biker or whatever, but why human trafficking specifically for your group? What's that intrinsic motivator?
Well, like you said, there's other organizations that are doing awesome work, regarding child abuse, and the whole thing about the riding community is that, as the eyes and ears of our communities, we are in a unique position to converse with others of like mind. We can go where others do not or cannot go. We attend several events throughout Southern Alberta and British Columbia, such as, classic car show and shines, motorcycle shows, charity events, toy runs, and many other events. And during these events, we're spreading the word about human trafficking in our community. And we're also on the lookout, scanning the crowds, hoping to spot traffickers and their victims.
It does happen in Canada and even right here in Southern Alberta. And it's so difficult to believe, isn't it?
It happens right here in our own backyards. And I mentioned, earlier that about 93%, are sexual exploitation. But did you know that 95% or so of the trafficking that happens in Canada, it's not all about immigrants coming over that are being brought in from some of these countries. 95% are Canadian citizens. They're born in Canada. Mm-hmm. And the thing is, Jeanette, Um, it's right across our nation. And it doesn't matter whether it's in the cities or out in the countryside, and Alberta is one of 5 hotspots in Canada, especially southern Alberta.
So if a viewer knows of someone who might be a victim or who this might be happening to, what is like the right way to respond? Because these are really dangerous people that we're dealing with.
And the thing is, a lot of these traffickers, they're in their mid-20s. And it's not just men, it's also women. Women who were trafficked at a younger age, that they became so reliant and dependent on these traffickers that they're actually doing this work for them, But if you're out in public, and especially if you see, I don't know if anybody has seen the signal like this, and we should be teaching our kids and schools and that about that hand signal. If anybody spots that in an airport or in a mall or something like that, or walking down the streets, I would say take a picture with everybody's got smartphones, so take a picture of the youngster and the person that they're with, and if they're walking to the car, get a license plate number, phone 911, and report it right away if there's any suspicion. There's certainly other ways you can go about too. There's anybody can have smartphones. We can phone 911 if it's something that you realize is what's happening, or we can contact organizations such as there's hotlines too. That are out there, and certainly if you want to contact us, we have our email batalberta at gmail.com. You can contact us.
Up next, although the snow hasn't fallen much lately in southern Alberta, once it does hit the ground, we tell you how to hit the ground running for the ski season. We'll be right back. Welcome back. If you're like me, you're probably anxious for the ski and snowboard season to get here. And with Christmas break right around the corner, what better time to hang out on the slopes? All we need now is some snow. Up next, BCN's Naveen Day chats with Cole Fawcett of Castle Mountain Ski Resort about what's offered at our nearby little gem in the Rockies.
What are the key steps you recommend for avid skiers and snowboarders to prepare themselves for the season on the slopes?
Yeah, great question. So if we can we don't want to lapse into not working out, not being active through the fall season. I think that's all too tempting for so many of us as the days get a little bit shorter and the temperatures get a bit cooler. So trying our best to keep active, and even if we can get a little bit of strength training in to keep those legs and that core strong for the coming ski season, because we're going to need those muscles when the snow hits the ground. Aside from that, we want to be looking at our gear, making sure that it's ready for the season. And for most of us, that's only going to necessitate a tune-up of skis or snowboards, so a wax or a sharpen of the edges, or a grind of the base to make it nice and smooth and flat again. And of course, that wax on top to make sure that it slides really nice on the snow. So I think those are probably the two major things. And aside from that, it pays to think ahead with respect to looking at season passes or frequency cards, what we call our WOW card, to save money, of course, before the season gets here.
But for those that might be new to Castle Mountain, what are the distinctive features of your resort that really set it apart from the others? And what should visitors be particularly excited about?
Well, first and foremost, if you're from the greater Lethbridge area, this is the closest Rocky Mountain resort to anybody living in greater Lethbridge, or really anybody in the southwestern portion of the province. So that in and of itself is important to note. Castle has some exceptional terrain. It's has a great variety and has great terrain for advanced and expert level skiers, intermediates and beginners too. But one of the things that really sets us apart from some of our competitors is the mountains on which we occupy. We have an abundance of terrain, and we see the most snow on average in the province of Alberta, period, of any other resort.
Wow.
Aside from that, there is a certain, I think, different feel to Castle. It's more laid back, it's more homey. It is owned and operated by the community. We have over 200 shareholders who are almost exclusively Albertans and who put their money into the resort basically to see it continue to exist kind of from the mid-90s onward, when it wasn't quite as vibrant, and it wasn't in a position where it was sustainable. And today, at least at this point in time, we are on a path to sustainability and on a path to upgrading some of the assets that we have here, some of the older lifts, as an example.
And beyond skiing itself, resorts often offer a variety of activities and events. Could you share some of the events and activities that Castle Mountain has planned?
Most of our programming is going to be ski or snowboard related, whether it's an on-mountain scavenger hunt, or it's a ski race, or a freestyle competition, or a big mountain competition. Most of what we have here is going to take place on the snowy slopes in some way, shape, or form. The other thing that we have that's unique to Castle and is actually very unique in North America is we have kind of what most people would think of as a ski resort with ski lifts, and you take the lift up and you ski down a run, and it may be all natural terrain, or like powder, or it may be groomed nightly. But we also have something called cat skiing or snow cat skiing. And that's where you actually hop into one of these snow cats, and it has a cabin on the back of it that's kind of like a mini bus in a sense, but it's capable of climbing snow-covered mountains. And cat skiing for us is a very exclusive experience. It's only 12 people per day, 5 days a week, and they get about 1,000 acres of skiable terrain all to themselves.
After the break, we highlight a Lethbridge organization providing support for women during crucial stages of their life. We'll be right back.
We see if you're a teenager, you qualify immediately for our program, no questions asked. So we also deal with women who, just are struggling social, emotionally, or physically.